Hello, and welcome back into the portal. I'm Amber A.
And I'm Andrew McKay.
And we got a special bonus app.
Yes, we do. I'm really excited about this. We weren't really sure if we were going to have time to do it, but we ended up with way more info on the big cats.
Lots of cool stuff.
Yeah.
Lots of interesting theories, some additional evidence, and a few revelations. Mostly thanks to one of our friends and listeners over in Australia there, Aaron.
Thank you so much. He sent us a ton of really cool information. He's just been really enthusiastic about this topic.
Definitely. And he actually has a copy of Lang and Williams' book, The Unnatural History of Panthers.
Right.
So that's a huge resource.
Yeah.
And so we got a couple of articles we're going to touch on, a few things. Right off the bat here, I think we're going to dive into the Winchelsea DNA results. So. Yeah,
this was cool. Yeah.
It was really cool. And it all started in the early 1990s. So this was actually from a Weekly Times journalist, Chris McLennan, sorry.
That's a very Australian
I was going to say
name.
McClellan. I was like, that's not right.
No, close enough.
Yeah, I know. So it's a very interesting development, I would say.
Yeah.
And it was almost 15 years in the making. So the story begins at the Otway Ranges, at a time when the grass was still abundant from spring and farmers were well versed in their craft, yet death was stalking at night.
Ominous.
Very ominous.
Yes.
So that was just a quote from the article there. But it was bizarre, right? So these guys, farmers, right? So they're mostly graziers, I think they're referred to. So like graze sheep,
right?
That type of thing. Maybe they'd be called shepherds?
Shepherds?
I don't know.
No, I saw a term. There's a few different terms out there. Obviously, that would be the most common one.
But it was kind of gross what they were experiencing.
Definitely.
So these were... Many kills were experienced over the night. Farmers would find the remains. It was very savage. Things like necks bitten in half, rib cages shredded, calves lying in pools of their own entrails, which is kind of bizarre because it's like these are almost, they sound like sport kills to me.
It does almost sound like that.
Or like things like a roo with its head missing.
Right. And like in the episode, obviously we mentioned like, livestock being killed and like farmers being some of the most, common people to be sighting big cats and different things like that. But like what stood out to me from this was like the idea it's full grown sheep and full grown cattle. That's difficult to bring down. And then you have these, it's just like, necks bitten in half, rib cages shredded, as if it's like, not even interested in really the meat.
It's just like the sport of it.
Or it's interested in it a little bit, and then it's just a kill.
And the thing is, too, like this particular story with this particular grazier, as we're going to call him, because he doesn't have a name, he's well experienced with these maulings by dog packs.
Okay.
And he knew right off the bat that, this was a quote, he knew something was much more lethal ranging his paddocks when the sun went down.
Yeah.
So he ended up calling for help. And a lot of farmers wouldn't have done this. A lot of people were hesitant to talk. They were suspicious that there could be some big cat, something like that in the area, but essentially they're scared of being called a loony, so the article goes. And what this guy ended up doing is he called in an expert. He called in the Department of Natural Resources and Environment in Geelong, and there was a wildlife expert there, David Cass, who took up the case for him. And Cass, obviously well experienced with these sorts of, like dead animals, carcasses, kind of trying to uncover what happened, all this kind of stuff. But he was taken aback by this. Like, this is a quote from Cass here. He says, this was right after he'd seen his first sort of body.
Right.
He said, it was just peeled open. The force that was applied just staggered me. It was bizarre. The landowner was no dummy, and he was a good bushman, so I took what he said seriously. And he goes on to say that, again, like, the people were hesitant to talk.
Yeah.
And it was actually interesting because, so this is like 1991 was when he was called into the case. And he actually ended up finding at one of the maulings an unusual scat. So it was distinct in size, color, and smell. It was very pungent, like we've seen described before, right?
Yeah, for those big cats.
So something,
for sure.
Exactly, something that was meant to mark the appearance.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they're not trying to hide it. So again, so he actually took this scat to Barbara Triggs, who was the leading expert in analyzing animal scat in Australia. And so she actually did a comparative analysis. And she asked for a sample from a known zoo leopard so that she could compare the two.
Okay.
And in the unknown specimen, there were 4 hairs extracted that were presumed to have been swallowed by the beast when he was grooming himself.
Okay.
Yes, and so her findings were very, very interesting. She said, this is a quote, there was a possibility that the Winchelsea feces were from a big cat, such as a black leopard.
Well, that is, I mean, such as a black leopard.
Such as a black leopard, because obviously the hairs were black.
Right.
And comparatively to the zoo leopard, obviously, yeah, very comparable. So, okay, she did consider her own analysis non-conclusive, and this was in the 1990s, so we didn't have the DNA testing
Wasn't exactly
capabilities.
the same, yeah.
Exactly.
Sure.
So she was just kind of going through her own sort of preliminaries. Other experts did offer up opinions that were very similar to Triggs, and essentially there was no conclusion, so they were stored away until the 2000s. All right, so this is where it gets interesting. So yeah, we're into the 2000s now, so it's been over a decade. Dr. Stephen Frankenberg, he works for the La Trobe University in the Department of Zoology, so this is in Melbourne.
Okay.
And he did some DNA testing. So,
Ooh.
what did he find?
Yeah.
He said it was a sample of Panthera pardus, a leopard.
Crazy.
Yes, and obviously, like, being a professional, he did, he said that there could have been a risk of contamination of the sample before the hairs had reached him, and he did refuse to be drawn into saying that the result is 100% accurate. So that's the classic skeptical scientist, they're taking
Well, it's just covering his bases.
Well,
He's covering
exactly,
himself
yeah.
a little bit.
It's almost like it's just the veneer of professionalism that a lot of people will take in the field, right? Even in academics, we've seen that so much, right?
But it's like, how would something even be contaminated where it would produce a result like that? You know what I mean? Like, it's
thing that I could say to argue for that would be that the initial tests and the initial samples could have been mixed up. So the known leopard sample could have accidentally made its way into the unknown sample.
That is the only thing that would make sense, though, because otherwise it's like you're not going to contaminate a sample of what is a very rare species or something like that.
It would have to be someone's blunder, you know what I mean? And I don't want to even go there because I feel like these people are professionals, right? Like this woman, Triggs, like she was the leading expert in studying animal scats.
Yeah.
So I don't want to really discredit her and say that, she could have just switched the bags accidentally or something, or you know what I mean? Or one of her assistants or whoever else working.
No, they're just throwing it out there as a possibility, but
that's it. Yeah, exactly.
But it's like this matches up with like what we talked about in the full length episode with the one documentary where they sent multiple scat samples in and then they did like a blind sample as well where they actually did the same thing, went and got a sample from a zoo, sent it, and then it still came back as dog or whatever it came back as, right?
Yeah,
like
that's obviously a different lab.
Yeah, exactly, totally different lab, which is why I was happy that we came across this and like Aaron sent this over because it adds a ton of legitimacy.
It does, yeah, in my opinion, because you do get the anecdotal evidence, right, of the farmers and the grazers and whatever, and then you get obviously the carcasses, the dead bodies, that's more evidence piling up, and then you get expert analysis, and this is what they're saying. So why would we, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to, I'm not taking the skeptic's point of view on this one.
No.
But yeah, no, so this Dr. Frankenberg, he actually agreed with the state's decision not to invest heavily into further research on the existence of big cats. I'm not sure why he said that. Maybe he was just like, it's politics of the day, or maybe he just really genuinely thought that, even if we do uncover more evidence, like what are we really going to do about it kind of thing? Because they're already unable to take care of the feral cat problem, supposedly.
Yeah, exactly, right.
But he did say here, so this is a quote from him, he said, "I do think it would be worth keeping an official open mind and establishing a system for properly analyzing evidence that might arise opportunistically in the future." Yeah.
Well, that's positive anyway.
Yeah, and this was actually referenced by Lang and Williams in their book, The Big Cats: A Natural History of Panthers, but essentially they were asked to keep the names involved anonymous because of it was kind of ongoing and inconclusive, and they just didn't really have the authority to put those names in there, but apparently it was referenced. So that's another one. If only we had that book, eh? Good thing Aaron does. Thanks, Aaron.
Well, it's tough when you do a weekly show to always be able to read a full book.
Well, if it's not an ebook too, and we have to order it.
Well,
then
exactly. Yeah, if it's an ebook, we usually will buy it, and
we're giving away how little we plan.
Well, no, it's obviously more than a week ahead, but it's like
Some
it's
of them,
tough.
yeah.
It's
Some
tough
of them
to
are in the
do.
works
It's
for
tough to
months.
do. Yeah, it's tough to do. Like even 2 to 3 weeks. Like when you're working and doing everything else, reading a full book.
Yeah.
So it's nice when we have people like anyone else listening. Whenever we cover a subject, if you feel like if you have extra info,
Yeah.
reach out.
Additional
We love it.
resources, articles, anything, books.
Totally.
Like, we love to hear all this stuff.
Absolutely. Like we don't know everything, obviously. Like
No.
we're trying to find out more every day, and that's
We're
why
just
we do
trying
this
to-
show because it's so much fun.
Well, exactly. And we're trying to bring to light stories that would otherwise stay on dusty shelves
Yeah, and just-
in dark corners of the internet.
And keep the
wherever.
conversation going. That's all it is a conversation. We
Yeah.
want other people to be a part of it too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that kind of wrapped up the article on this particular revelation.
Yeah, and really cool. I mean,
I think that lends a lot of legitimacy and a lot of weight to
it's
it.
nice that we have some actual. I mean, not that we didn't before, but yeah, just a few extra names, to throw behind it, right? Like actual people in the field.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, the next sort of thing here that we had brought to our attention, we actually sort of came across it in research, but you pulled this up, so why don't you intro this? And
It didn't really make it into the episode.
no, it didn't quite make it in. I mean, we touched on it. Essentially, it is referencing the Queensland tiger. Mm-hmm.
So this is the 1964 Rila Martin's photo.
Yes.
And we will include references so you can guys go look at the actual photo because it's quite controversial. And because it was taken with a box brownie camera, it's not a high quality shot by any means. And
No.
a lot of people use that to either support the fact that it is legitimate or support the fact that it would be very easy to stage, right?
Yeah. And like one of the things that, like when we brought this up again and looked at it, I was like, oh, I think that's why it ended up getting sort of left out of the full-length episode. Not because it wasn't worth mentioning, but just because I came across a lot of things saying that it was a hoax or phony or whatever. But again, those are all, I mean, most of those references were not from necessarily peer-reviewed sources or anything like that. They're just from a lot of the similar sources you find online when you're researching cryptid
Everyone
creatures.
has an opinion, right?
Yeah, so it's still divided.
It is. But, yeah. Okay. So, it was taken in Goroke, West Australia. Depicts an unknown cat-like striped animal. Could be marsupial in nature.
Yeah,
who
you guys
knows?
gotta go take a look at this. It is weird. It's very, yeah.
And
Anyway.
it's so
It's
blurry.
big. It's big, though. I mean, the object itself. But it's from a distance.
Some people will say that because it's, taken from a distance, because it's in the forest, there could have been tricks of the light, like dappling. There also could have been, it could have been literally, like some people say, it's just stumps and rocks, and the angle and the lighting and maybe some manipulation could have made it look like an animal that was running.
Right.
I think that's a stretch, personally. Similar to the way that Joe Nichols' owl theory is a bit of a stretch.
I always end up thinking of exactly that
I know,
example, right?
Yeah.
To try to be more descriptive for people listening of this, essentially it is like you can see
Here, I actually have a description of the photo.
Perfect,
right
yeah, go for it.
here.
Do you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So it shows what looks like a large quadrupedal predator with a long tail, deep chest, tall shoulders, and a rather deep head. The photo really isn't that bad, but foliage that overlaps the head makes it difficult to work out what the head shape really is. So incidentally, this is actually a quote from the article. Incidentally, the original photograph has been lost by the offices of the Wimmera Mail Times. So all the versions you see and elsewhere are scans of copies published by newspapers.
So there's no way of reanalyzing the original photograph.
No.
So there's no way of
there's no negatives,
of
there's no
conclusively
nothing.
saying if it was a hoax or not, because any of the additional copies could be edited or doctored or whatever.
Yeah. There is one version of it from a book from the 1980s that I think is like the one that he or she, whoever wrote the article references is like the most, like, the most formed, the most complete photograph that we have of
Right.
this copy of it.
Yeah.
So a lot of people think that this depicts a thylacine.
Yes.
So it's like a thylacine, like we covered before, is a carnivorous marsupial, supposedly went extinct in the early 20th century, like in captivity.
Yeah.
Supposedly it went extinct a long time before that in the wild. Like, I saw quotes where they were
well-
like, oh, 3,000 years ago it went extinct. I was like, what?
Oh, well, it's, and of course people think it's still out there, so it's
Well,
really extinct. But,
exactly.
I mean, yeah, no, the reports were that it essentially, like, if you go to Wikipedia, it'll tell you that it was already dying off in very low numbers before British colonization, and then post-colonization, they died off quite quickly because of farmers and stuff. And then, yeah, there were some in captivity. The last one was photographed and filmed in 36, 37, I believe. And,
Right, okay.
yeah.
And died in captivity in the
That was
zoo?
in, yeah, and you know what? It had died because of exposure. It died because of poor, nobody was looking after it properly. This is the 30s. Yeah, it was stupid.
What?
Apparently. I don't know how true that is, but I mean, definitely when you watch the video, it doesn't look like a very, very
people suck.
well kept.
If you're freaking keeping these things in captivity, why don't you just do it right?
Now, I'm going to make another distinction.
Just
I
do
know,
it right.
right? I know. It's terrible. So I'm going to make a distinction again between the Tasmanian tiger and the Queensland tiger in a second when we get through this part here. But just to point this out again, because it's like this photo, people who are advocates that the thylacine, the Tasmanian tiger, the much more dog-like carnivorous marsupial,
Sorry, the Tasmanian is the dog-like one?
yeah, is
Okay.
much more dog-like. Some people think that this photo is that. Other people think it looks more like the Queensland tiger, which is a cryptid creature not known to officially exist and is a
Okay.
presumed descendant of the Thylacoleo, ancient species of marsupial that is also related to the thylacine.
Just
They're
confuse
all in
people
this,
even
yeah,
more.
they're all in the same, and I'm going to give an explanation of that in a second, but just to be clear.
So let's get the story from Rhea Martin.
Let's hear it.
Yeah. So supposedly she was on holiday in 1964 and she was driving along between Goroke and Apsley. This is the quote from the article. With time to spare, she chose to drive along the dirt track near Ozencadnock. Oh my gosh.
Okay.
Ozencadnock. She had been photographing relatives while at Goroke, where her cousin lived, and had her camera next to her on the front seat. In the woods close to the road, she caught sight of an unusual animal standing at the edge of the scrub. She stopped the car and snapped one photo just as the animal began to run away. And that was basically how she went.
So,
Yeah.
see, that's...
But you know what's interesting too? Like Martin's... Okay, so the head is obscured in the photograph. It
Yes.
literally looks like it's a headless thing.
It does.
Or it's got the tiniest little head in the whole world. But she says how when she actually saw the creature, it had a pig-like snout.
Pig-like?
Yeah. And
Interesting.
the other interesting thing that she said was that at the time that she snapped the photo, she didn't actually notice any stripes that appear really predominantly in the photo, right on the back end of the creature.
Which is obviously like the thylacine and the tiger stripes, right?
Exactly. But yeah, so because of that, some people have sort of supposed that, again, like I said, the dappling. So it could have been a trick of the light coming through the trees in the forest.
Oh, like a shadowing effect.
Exactly. So
Okay.
like branches, and then you get like some like that
We've
can
seen
happen
that.
very
I've
easily.
seen that. Lots of people. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So
Okay.
that is very likely that could have been the case. So therefore, like, where does that leave us then? Is it a fox? You know what I mean?
Wow,
Like,
but it's obviously bigger than that.
and it actually had like more muscle and a little bit more.
And she saw it
definition.
move. That's important, right? She saw it actually physically move.
If you're going to
afterwards.
believe her story,
Right.
Because there is some people that they don't believe it at all. There's some people that will say that no, this clearly depicts a three-dimensional animal with muscles, etc., that type of thing, and is not a cutout. And there was actually ABC News. They tried to recreate the photo using a cutout. And yeah, so they tested the theory, they planted it in the woods and tried to photograph it, and it was just brutally obvious that it was a
Right.
fake. And
Right.
I don't know if they're using a box brownie camera, though, so who knows?
Well, that would be a terrible study if you were using a modern camera and trying to...
Trying to recreate it.
how obvious it is. Like,
I know, yeah. But, yeah, so, I don't know. I don't know what to believe, really, because there's some people that will say that, like, this one non-believer, I'm just gonna quote them here, because they just... they go into it. Yeah.
Okay, let's hear
So
it.
they say, it's a scam photo and a piss-poor amateur job at that. By deliberately underlighting and shifting focus, the object, which is a partially decomposed carcass with broad stripes painted at the wrong end, the photographer produced a vague image that can't be readily scrutinized. She trotted it to the local news rag, who paid her for the photo, and then it was shopped around as evidence of the famed Tasmanian tiger. And then they go on to say, it's one of hundreds of attempts to produce a photographic evidence of a large cat in Australia. Many photos taken since show large feral cats roaming in the bush, mistaken as the long-lost Pleistocene big cats. At least these objects in question look alive and cat-like and still have limbs and heads. She says this one, or he, sorry, I don't know who it was. It says here, this one looks like a poorly made replica. A Brownie Hawkeye box camera, which I happen to own as a kid, would give you a blurred image of a running animal. The brush in the midsection covers the support used to prop it up, which isn't quite covered. Oops. So they're just referencing, there's this one underneath the belly of the creature. There's like this little like limb-like thing coming out, and it's really, really hard to see, really. But they use that as reference.
Okay, well, fair enough.
Sort of support that.
Fair enough, because like, I can see that, but it's like that could easily be a stick. It could be anything.
It could be
anything in that photo
yeah.
could be anything.
And they even said at one point in the article, which was written by Darren Nash, he says that it looks striped too. So is that again the light? Is that the actual creature itself? Is it a creature at all? Is it just...
This comes down to, again, like, it would take, again, more time, but you have to look into, who is Rila Martin? What's her background?
That's a good question.
What is her background?
I don't actually know, but apparently they're kind of bush people. Like, this was a quote from John Martin, her brother, who stated in 1999 that the photo was no hoax, and responding to suggestions that the photo manipulation of some sort might have been involved, he stated that we country kids hardly knew how to take a photo, let alone fiddle with it.
Right.
So that was actually taken from Lang and Williams' book.
Huh.
Yeah.
You know, I obviously think like people will hoax things, and people will put up two-dimensional copies of whatever Sasquatches or whatever.
And then people blame them. They're like, well, the people that go straight to the press, they're like, oh, it's obviously fake. But it's like, what if they are just trying to bring public awareness?
Well, that's just it. It's like it's always the debate between it's always got to be monetary gain, really. Like, it's like, why would anybody go to the effort and like either for monetary gain or just publicity or whatever? Yeah, you have to look at the character and see right. But it's like, like the brother's quote there. I mean, I don't know. I'm sort of on the fence about this one, but I don't think that photo looks outright like a hoax. It just looks very strange. You know what I mean?
It does.
But it keeps the conversation going, photos like that, and it's because it is so obscure. Right? If it was so perfect, like that's the other thing too. If this is a person who's, has a half a brain cell at all and is trying to hoax something, is that their angle? Like, are they trying to make it so it's so obscure to the point where you can't really say one way or the other, and that's their sort of like that's the hoax, right? Like you'd think the hoax would be two-dimensional cutout, got some stripes on the butt, and we put it at a distance where it looks kind of like this and it looks kind of like, right? And, because we have seen hoaxed photos of the black cats.
Yeah.
And they're clear, and like you go through the analysis and it's like clearly just a two-dimensional cutout, but it looks like a cat. Like it looks definitively like a cat.
Yeah.
So it's sort of weird. It's a weird thing to suggest.
Like, why would you hoax something that is
poorly.
clearly that and that no one's ever really heard of? Like, are you really like from 1964? I guess I don't know. People heard about.
Well, people had heard about it, but it's I don't know. I don't know.
I'm just looking at another. This is from Scientific American blog, and it's just going into again like, oh, here's Darren Naish. Oh yeah, sorry, this is Darren Naish. It's another article by him. But he's just going off more on the whole hoax tidbit there. But I don't really see much here. Like, it's just
more of the same kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So essentially, though, like, people thought that this was either a thylacine, or if you're a little bit more to the cryptozoology realm, the Queensland tiger. Essentially a ancient species of marsupial that would have been the ancestor of the thylacine that had still managed to survive somehow.
Yeah.
And I found out a few more cool things, and
cool.
Aaron pointed this out. It's not anything too crazy, and we may have kind of loosely touched on it at the beginning, but
let's just clear that up.
Anyway, so but Aaron sent this over, and we just wanted to say thank you again. So it's shout out to Aaron.
Yeah.
But he reminded me about this, and I kind of forgot. But the thylacoleo. Okay, so this was the ancient marsupial cat, the marsupial lion.
Okay.
just to be clear, they're not lions, right? Like, it's not cats.
No.
And actually, what I found out, which was kind of funny, from the bunyip episode, we were dealing with the diprotodon, those giant,
yeah.
essentially almost, they're ground marsupials.
Looks like a bear sloth.
Yeah, basically. These animals, the thylacoleo, the thylacine, all these marsupial predators are all under the same umbrella as the diprotodon in the genus called oh my goodness gracious.
Diprotodon
It sounds like I'm just trying to say diapers. Diprotodontia. Anyway.
Just
brutal.
the diapers, you know. Right?
Brutal. But anyway, I thought that was kind of interesting. So yeah.
Diprotodontia.
Nice
First
job.
try.
Nice job.
Boom.
So that was interesting just because it tied into the bunyip episode and they're all in the same marsupial realm. So like the modern descendants are kangaroos, wombats, wallabies, these types of animals, right? But what was interesting too was like the thylacoleo had multiples of it. There wasn't just one kind. So if you're talking about the idea of it surviving into modern times, there was more than one, and they were different sizes. They lived in sort of different areas. They did different things. So the thylacoleo carnifex is the biggest one. That's the marsupial lion. That was the largest. I think it was like up to 190 kilograms or something. Like big marsupial cat that would attack its prey from behind and shred it with its powerful claws. And then it had a jaw basically unmatched in Australia and would crush anything that it caught.
That's so cool.
But
so there's a whole mass of these animals.
Yeah.
Hey, and even in that photo, in the Rila Martin's article, like they have this drawing depiction of exactly that, like a giant bear sloth.
Oh, okay.
They have like here, like that whole thing there. Sorry, I just pulled my computer thing out of the wall.
That's okay.
But yeah, no, so there's definitely lots of different subspecies within that category.
Yeah, so it was essentially the category was Thylacolenidae, right? So, and all of these range between like the late, like all the way up until the late Pleistocene era and possibly much further. So the official record is like 40 to 30,000 years, quite possibly to now,
Cool.
in my opinion, like, because people are seeing stuff. And the sizes were crazy. So you've got the 190 plus marsupial lion all the way down to a possum size.
Wow, okay.
But still carnivorous.
That's a range.
So still hunting, other small mammals and rodents and things like that. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I thought that was kind of interesting because it gives more possibilities of additional survivors, right?
Yeah, just like hybrids and
hybrid species.
Because some people do point to the fact that, like that one super harsh critic of the photo that I quoted, they were like, oh, well, the stripes are clearly in the wrong spot on the body. Well, it's like, well, what if it was another subspecies that had the stripes in a slightly different spot?
Possibly. Or I like the kind of the light through the forest aspect, too, because that makes sense. Too. We've seen that effect before.
Makes me wonder, though, like, what it would have been then if it was just the light and it was no stripes, but it was some...
Just a big old cat of some
kind.
Could
have, but it didn't really look like it had more features of...
Just a cryptid creature.
Of the thylacine or something. And even how she described how it was like a snout like a pig. That's not very...
Well, the thylacine has such a long snout like a wolf.
Yeah, that's weird.
So like the pig snout almost sounds more like when you look at some of the recreated photo like images.
Looks like the Diprotodon, actually.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. A little bit like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like snub nose.
Yeah.
Like the cat, like the marsupial lion in its pictures is more snub nose, more so than the thylacine. That's why they were called, they're called like a Tasmanian wolf as well, is another kind of sub name for them. And just same deal with them as the thylacoleo. So there's offshoots of the thylacine into subspecies of the thylacine.
Okay.
So again, that gives a higher possibility that additional kind of subspecies could have survived or, had hybrid offspring with others. I thought that was kind of interesting. And then also the fact that so it's Australia, Tasmania, obviously, where it's a, place of origin, but also New Guinea, like close by New Guinea. So another spot that's obviously crazy remote.
Yeah.
And with really dense jungle and stuff like that, these marsupials were arboreal, like they lived in and amongst the trees. I don't know. They were saying essentially that the Tasmanian tiger was the last of any species to survive. So that the ones in New Guinea had died off, the ones in Australia had died off. But I mean, New Guinea is so remote.
They're predatory, they're solitary, like they're if they don't want to be seen, they're not going to be seen.
Right. No. And then of course, like there's been sightings, like this one isn't crazy recent, but in 1997 it was reported that missionaries near Mount Casertnes, Carson. That can't be spelled correctly. Anyway, somewhere in Western New Guinea, they cited multiple thylacines, and the local
Carstens, maybe.
Yes.
Mount Carstens.
Yeah, that sounds right. Western New Guinea, anyway. They cited multiples though, so like not just one. What? So
Cool.
And apparently the locals in the area had basically been noticed them for years, and nobody had made any official report that they were still alive in New Guinea.
Who's to say that there couldn't be a resurgence too? You know what I mean? Like they could wane and then wax. I'm talking about the moon now.
Wax and wane.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, yeah. The thing is too, it's like somebody brought this up in the chat. I don't know if it was on Facebook or where, but somebody mentioned like, we're in an era right now where obviously tons of species are dying off at an alarming rate. So to suggest that more would survive on the one hand sounds kind of crazy, but at the same time, it's like if these species are hardy enough to make it and survive in places that are so intense and remote, those are the ones that are going to keep going, right? It's not going to be the ones that we know of in and amongst human populations.
They might experience positive benefits from the die-off of other competitive species.
Possibly.
So in that sense, it could actually favor some evolutionary-wise than others.
Maybe.
I don't know.
So there you go. So New Guinea, possible other location for still existing.
We're going to have cockroaches and big cats at the end of the world.
That's it. Cockroaches, scorpions, and big cats.
Scorpions?
Well, they survive anything.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
They're so rare, though.
Yeah, but they're hardy. Are
hardy.
They? Depends where you are.
Actually, I saw one in at the Barnaby Bench. We're going to call it that now. Yeah, just up the hill here in our neighborhood.
Crazy.
When I was little, it was jet black. Freaky, man.
That is freaky.
My sister will attest to that.
Wow.
We were there together.
Crazy. We did have one last thing to kind of touch on here.
And again, this was from Aaron. So we just asked him a little bit, like from that book, the Lang and Williams Unnatural History of Panthers. We just wanted to know if there was anything we had missed, because we went through their synopsis and all their available resources on the website, but obviously the book would have more, because why would you buy it? So he said that the only thing that he could say that we didn't really touch on was the Asian golden cat.
Yeah, which I had never heard of before.
Yeah, so it's also called the Asiatic golden cat or the Temminck's cat. And it's about a medium-sized wild cat. It's known to reside in the Indian subcontinent and as well in Southeast Asia. And it's been listed as near threatened on the red list since 2008.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's being threatened by deforestation, hunting pressures, and habitat loss. Sorry.
Sad.
Oh, yeah. Same deal with everything in this world, eh?
Yeah.
But yeah, they are much the same as bigger predatory cats as far as they're being solitary animals, territorial. There isn't much known about their behaviors and breeding habits in the wild because they choose to live in such isolated areas that are very heavily forested and
tough to research.
Well, a little bit. A lot of the research that's been done is on ones that are living in captivity, just to kind of get an idea of their breeding habits and their maturation rates, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because they're called the golden cat, but they can be black.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And they can climb trees when necessary. They're very similar. So they're in the same ballpark. So they could represent, because in that index of sightings, that big one from pantherpeople.com, there's a lot, they actually have a reference for size, an image. So they have a human, then they have a regular domestic cat, and then they have what the person saw. So they can put if it looked like a jaguar, if it looked like a little bit smaller, like a lynx or whatever. And so a lot of them were on the smaller end of the spectrum. Yeah. And so I was just thinking to myself, what could, would that just denote, a lot of them I just didn't even include in our episode because of that, because I thought, they'll just be a feral cat, most likely, right? Mm-hmm. Because they can get quite big as far as we've heard, right? But, I feel I feel like this is totally plausible. And
it's kind of in the area.
Well, it is,
right? In terms of, travelers and
so you
people
could
trading
imagine,
or whatever.
Even potentially, for that one theory we had where it was, possibly the Dutch or other sort of sea navigators that are picking things up. Even the Chinese did it, right? With the giraffes and stuff when they were in exploratory missions. Yeah. And then maybe
maybe they had a couple of these golden cats to trade as a fancy pet. And then they, maybe it was not Gay Hong. Yeah, Gay Hong, right?
Yeah, Gay Hong.
He allegedly went to Australia, made it to Australia. Perhaps maybe there was some leftovers from the trip.
I'm imagining even not Scarface style. It's not Scarface where you had like that big lion or
Yeah, tiger.
tiger
Yeah.
in this background. But
It's
like,
like a white tiger.
what if, yeah, like wealthy immigrants are setting up these plantation type palaces and they have like a couple big cats for like exotic
I
pets.
definitely think that is an angle that makes sense.
It
And I
does.
feel like the Dutch, like the early exploration, well, obviously the Chinese were there even earlier though, right? So if they were transporting animals, we know that for sure, but it was mostly bringing them back to China.
Yeah.
So, but
Like even Mike Tyson had a big cat, right? In The Hangover.
yeah, no, I'm pretty sure that was his cat in real life.
Really?
Like a pet tiger.
Cool.
I'm fairly certain.
But not cool because
It's also
I don't know
horrible.
if I agree with that.
Yeah, unless it was like rescued from Siegfried and Roy or something.
Unless it was on death row and you're giving it a second chance at life, like, I don't know.
So yeah, the Asian golden cat, that's kind of cool. It's relatively in the area in terms of trade and stuff like that. Makes more sense that an Asian golden cat would end up in Australia that also can possibly be black sometimes than like a lynx, like a North American lynx.
Oh, yeah. Or North American mountain lion.
which
Sorry,
are
I thought-
never black. Like that we
Right,
know of, right?
yeah.
Like maybe there's one out there that's super
They're
random.
crossbreeding
and-
potentially. But
Potentially. So that was the other thing I just wanted to end on here.
Oh, can I talk about one more thing?
Oh yeah, no.
I just wanted to include
Go,
this
for
cool
sure.
thing I from the mythologies of the Asiatic golden cat. So
okay.
apparently this is a total side note tangent, but apparently the fur and the flesh of the golden cat has magical properties in mythologies of Taiwanese and like in the area.
Very cool.
So apparently it keeps tigers at bay. And by burning the coats, so like the furs of a golden cat, or eating its flesh will do the trick. But even carrying a single hair has this effect, supposedly. So if you're traipsing through the jungle, make sure you have one of those on you and you'll be saved. Anyway, sorry.
That's really cool. And obviously there's a ton of mythologies around these animals.
Well,
and
spiritual
like
animals,
in
man.
Central South America too, like the jaguar and stuff like that. You see that in all kinds of artwork and it was actually it was funny. We've both read the book The Lost City of the Monkey God, and they were searching for that the white city in Honduras and stuff like that. But when they actually found one of the caches, they found a bunch of jade jaguars and like figurines like that. It wasn't necessarily like monkey figures found because it's just such a revered animal. I mean, it is the apex predator of basically wherever it is, essentially, right? These animals.
Yeah.
Last thing I wanted to mention was that I kind of just loosely looked into it, but like. We had the idea thrown out that maybe it's all of the above, right? Maybe it's species that have survived and gone into modern times and released cats that come from the early 1800s or much earlier with Dutch or Chinese or whatever, as well as cats from World War II and all of the above. Marsupials and these big cats could possibly breed. Interbreed.
Oh, okay.
Like from what I've looked at, I haven't seen anything. It's cursory glance, but if anyone out there is a biologist
Or a zoologist. Or even a cryptozoologist.
there's allegedly kangaroo cat hybrids that have been done and stuff like that, but it's possible from what I've looked at. So that's just kind of interesting. So it's like
the one question I have are these
would they remain,
is the offspring able to breed and reproduce, or is it like a mule where it's just that's the end of it?
right? And no way to know. But you'd at least potentially have multiple options in terms of like if it's escaped pumas or is it escaped whatever's, and are they able to breed with survived thylacines or are they able to breed with something else?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of mixing and matching in this sort of cryptozoology realm that could potentially work. But I just thought that was kind of interesting because they are marsupials, these ancient predators of Australia. But they're all mammals, and they're all predators. So they all match up. And the aspect of the trees was the same. They all live in amongst the trees. They're arboreal, all of these animals. So they would be mating in the same sort of areas, potentially with the same sort of practices.
Cool.
And I believe that there's big cats.
I believe. Yeah. Well, we want to believe.
Yeah, I want to believe.
Well, anyways, that kind of wraps up our bonus episode.
Yeah. Thank you so much for listening.
Yeah, and we want to know what you guys think of all this stuff. So
Definitely.
reach out.
Yeah, send us shoot us an email into the portal mailbox@gmail.com, or you can where you can reach us. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and come chat with us wherever. And as usual, we will be back on Sunday.
Yeah.
So until then, on into the portal.
was a podcast from the Podfix Network. You can check out more shows like it at podfixnetwork.com.